Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Munir Azouzi from easymedicaldevice.com, and today I will try to explain to you why you are failing your clinical evaluation and also how to fix it, because mainly this is one of the issues. So clinical evaluation is really the pain point on MDR, because even when we are looking to other regions in the world, we have really increased of one level the clinical evaluation. And it's not only me who is saying that, notified bodies also, because they say that most of the failures, most of the the late, also the delay, are due to the clinical evaluation or clinical evidence or clinical document that you are providing. And in the other side, when you are looking at manufacturers, they are underestimating clinical data. So it's also the major problem that we have is also the fact that manufacturers, some of them are still thinking, oh, it's enough, this is enough, I don't need to provide more. And this is one of the reasons. So if you are a QA area person or clinical person that is trying now to submit a clinical evaluation or build one, etc. So listen mainly to all those elements that we'll be talking today, because I'm trying to give you also an idea of what it should be so that you are successful. And this is mainly difficult for some manufacturers to follow those advices. So I hope you'll help the community by following some of those advices. So you may ask yourself now, what did change? Because it's not the under MDR that we have had the clinical evaluation report that were required, or clinical data that were required. So if we make a flashback, if I can say, and look at MDD, which was the previous legislation, you may see that, or may understand, or may remember, if you are old enough, that within MDD, the clinical evaluation was still required, but in terms of the requirements, it was more about equivalency that were used, or literature that were used, which means that as soon as you had a product that is nearly the same as you and on the market, you can just make a comparison to this product and it's working. But it was not like what we have today, which is really strict and really strict. Under MDR, you are asked to demonstrate evidence under a specific product, under your product. Mainly your product is the basis, and then you have to make an equivalency to other devices. So this is mainly how you can read it with Article 61 and Annex 14. So you have this double view now under MDD and MDR. And it's why also you had this experience maybe that when you were passing your certificate under MDD just before MDR, so everything went well. And as soon as you move to MDR with the same data, it was not okay because a lot of things were missing. So most of the differences that we can see are also the fact that we have a change inside the GSPR, and now we have to strictly tie to the GSPR requirements. So GSPR is General Safety and Performance Requirements, Annex 1. And this is mainly something that you have really to compare your data to confirm that you are really conform to those requirements that are in GSPR 1 and 9. The other one is about equivalency. We talked about equivalency before. So equivalency, you had some interpretation of equivalency. Now there are some tighter rules of that. So mainly, what is equivalency? So those rules made that a lot of products were not qualified anymore to be equivalent. We have even sometimes those vocabulary that are, my device is similar to another device or is equivalent to another device. So what is the difference? So mainly this is also those kind of vocabulary that creates some confusion. But yeah, making your device equivalent to another device can be a nightmare. And we'll talk also about that a bit later. The other point is also the change. I don't know if we can say change because it's still existing, but the interpretation under the MedDev, if you remember the MedDev for clinical evaluation, it says mainly, it talks about plan and reports or plan and execution, but we had the right under MDD to have one document that summarize the plan and the report. But the differentiation between both were not really clear. I remember I looked at some clinical evaluation plan report under MDD, and yes, the plan was not really clear, or it was really short, because mainly all what we will talk about on the plan will be directly discussed on the report. So this was making some confusion. So now this confusion is not existing anymore with EU MDR, because it's asking you to create first a plan that is separate from the report, and this was also some kind of differences there. And the last point is also about the PMCF. I don't know if you know this word now, but when I was working before under MDD, we heard about PMCF, but it was not something mandatory to use. It was something existing, but you can still escape it. Now it's really difficult to escape PMCF, and to be honest, it's really a tool that you really need to use. We will talk about that also a bit later. But yeah, mainly these are the differences that you can see under MDD and MDR for clinical evaluation. And mainly we have here a shift from literature-based reasoning and real performance of a certain device. So this is mainly what makes the difference and what creates all those issues that we see now on your dossier or with notified bodies or whoever. So MDD is more about tell me it works. So mainly tell me that your product works. So yes, it works and see the data, etc. Where MDR is more like prove it that it works with your own data. So you cannot just do it with data of others, you have to prove it with your own data. And this is the challenge that we can see with a lot of manufacturers actually. Okay, now let's look more in depth about where your dossier will fail. So I made a list. I looked at and asked questions also about with people, asked them about what was the reason for failure. I looked also at some dossiers that manufacturers were showing to me and contacting me after they had a failure due to from their notified body. And we have made a list of 7 reasons for failure, so I will just read them here. But if you are understanding those failures, I hope you will not make them again, and then you will be safe for this. So the first, and we talked a bit about that before, it's a weak or missing clinical evaluation plan. As I said before, under MDD, there was still the mentioned plan on the MedDev, but we can have one document that contains both plan and report. But if you are really structuring a good clinical evaluation plan, it's helping you a lot. And we'll look at that also later, how to fix it. There was also, because of MDD again, some over-reliance on literature. And the reason for that is mainly that we think that because we have some literature, it's sufficient. Maybe have somebody that made like a literature talking about those type of devices, that it proves that your device is the most safe and can be used. So this is a reasoning that now is changed under MDR. You have really to find or show a link with your device, and this is mainly why you have some failures. One failure that always happen, I would not say always, but we had that situation a lot of time, is about invalid equivalency. So people are thinking that their device is equivalent to another device, and mainly they are basing all their strategy for clinical evaluation just to that, nothing else. So it means that if this fails, or everything falls. So mainly this is the reason why you have to have a clear understanding of when you can use an equivalency device, why you should do that. I mean, if you use an equivalency just because in the US mode or US model, my device is equivalent to a device that is already on the market, so it's sufficient to make that my device compliant. No, it's not working like that. You should really use an equivalency in the case the other device that is equivalent has a lot of clinical data that are proving that your device are safe and performant. And sometimes it's not at all the case. I had also this, which is funny because we have some manufacturers that are selling their device since many years. And when we are asking them what are their claims, they show to us like even their web page with like 20 claims of my device can do this, can do that, can do this, can do that, etc. And when we are asking them to share with us some evidence, do you have a mapping between this claim is backed up by this evidence, etc. And at the end, we find out that 80 to 90% of the claims that they had were not backed up by any evidence or any clinical data, which is mainly one of the biggest error that they are doing. Because the notified body, they will check each claim that you are writing, show me also the clinical data to it. And we had a lot of manufacturers that had to drop off a lot of claims due to that. And this is one of the reasons. There was also, this big risk, which is big risk. It's a connection with here. We have some discontinuation or disconnection between risk management and clinical evaluation. So mainly we are defining some risk on our risk management file or FMEA if you want. And we are not linking that to the clinical evaluation. So we are not verifying that this risk is really existing or this risk is backed up by some clinical evaluation which make it reduced, etc. So we don't have this link between what we are doing on risk management and the clinical evaluation, which can be also a problem because we are trying to evaluate a benefit risk analysis. So if you don't have the link with the risk, how can you define the benefit? And this is mainly the strategy here. Next is the PMCF. So there is no PMCF strategy at all. So we have no discussion of PMCF or no understanding of what's after, because clinical evaluation is mostly something that you are doing before CE marking, but you are stopping at the certification. But what's happening after, how you do that, it's somehow missing also. And this is something that notified bodies wants to see and wants to verify before you are launching your product. And the last one, which is more a bonus, because something that we are seeing on some other technical files, it's the poor traceability between, as we talked about, risks and clinical and PMCF and PMS, etc. So the problem with that is that if you are putting yourself at the place of the reviewer, if he tries to see the link of some of those documents one to the other and he cannot find them or he cannot understand how you moved from here to here because you haven't established a good traceability, then this can be a problem. So it's why there are some reviewer that are just giving up, if I can say. They just write a non-conformity saying I was not able to find that to that or that to that, which makes it a problem. While maybe you have those links, it's just that it was not clear when you are looking really at those documentation. So make some links between all your documents, a table or link or whatever, but give put in place some tools that will help the reviewer to find out what you know about your products and why your product is safe, because mainly this is what they are looking for. So all those errors that I'm talking to you now, they are all fixable, but it's why I talk to you, quality and regulatory affairs people. It's fixable if you take those errors, if you understand those errors early and you act early. What I see mostly is that people are acting at the submission phase, or even after they submitted, then they start to work on the traceability, or they have to update the CER or do all those corrections because notified bodies inform them. Use that errors list that I've showed to you now as a help for you to verify if you will not fall within those errors. Because if you make those errors, mainly the notified body will delay your submission or delay your review or even stop it, etc. So it's why really have a look at that. Okay, so now let's tackle one of the issues that we saw before, which is clinical evaluation plan. As I've said, you have to build a clinical evaluation plan that is standalone, if I can say, or separate from the clinical evaluation report. And you have to normally build it in advance. So it's not like you build it later. So if possible, I know that maybe some will hear me and say, no, and I know some people do that. They create first the CER and then they make the CEP aligned to the CER, which can be working. But to be honest, I prefer that first we define the rules. And by defining the rules, I mean that on the CER, you have to write mainly on the CEP, sorry, on the CEP, you have to write mainly what is first the intended purpose of your device, and also what are the claims that you are planning to test or verify. What is the objective of your clinical evaluation report? So can you ask the question, what is the question that you are trying to answer within your clinical evaluation plan, so that we have a clear understanding of where we are going or what we are trying to achieve here. Then what are the sources that you will use, the data source that you will use? So we talk about maybe clinical investigation, literature, PMS, PMCF, which database for literature will you look at, which keywords you will try to use, etc., etc. Then also which methodology for assessing all those data you will use, some statistical methodology or some review, etc. So you have to define how you will assess that. Sometime I have on this like the how we call that? Oh, I forgot the word. So not the assessment. I can't remember. When you segregate, let's say you reject or you include or reject. So I can't remember the word, how it's going. But it's on the med dev, so it's on I see that on the circle of appraisal. I see it on the circle of the med dev. So appraisal. When you do your appraisal, and then you have to define the criteria for inclusion, exclusion, what are you accepting, not accepting, etc. So you do those analyses. So you have to define that also on the CEP, so you know exactly why you have included those literature or not. And lastly, you have also to define your acceptance criteria. I remember we discussed about that on another podcast with Cesare Magri about those acceptance criteria that you define in advance, so that will help you to already answer your question. Can I accept or not? Yes or no, because you have already the acceptance criteria within your CEP. And some tips that I will give you, but as I've said, some are not following that. It's really to really write the CEP before the CER, so that, as I said, if it's written before, you already define what are the rules of the game that you are playing now, and that you can then follow those rules and make it clear why you accepted this or accepted that. Defining also on the CEP, defining those threshold acceptance criteria will help you, because then writing the CER will be easy for you. You don't have to think too much, because you already define what are the rules that you will follow, what are the thresholds that you will be accepting or not accepting, and the justification why you accept that. So yeah, somehow some will make the threshold really low, and you'll have then to justify why this low threshold is fine, and some will make it maybe too high and maybe never reach it. So it's also something that you have to balance. So make it clear and fair, but justified also for the reviewer. So the CEP can be the key for your success within the clinical evaluation report. So it's why, make it clear and make it really take some time to build it and to make the strategy within the CEP. Okay, now that you have created your CEP, you have to generate and analyze those data that you will be creating. So what are the types of data that are recognized within a clinical evaluation? First, which is the golden data, it's the clinical investigation, because you are collecting data against your device, with your environment, how your device is working directly on the patient. So mainly this is something that is really golden data. Then you can use, as we said, some published literature that are maybe on equivalent data, only this existing. So you cannot just make a device equivalent to another one. This equivalent device has no clinical data, so it makes no sense and it has no value at all. But if this equivalent device, which is really equivalent, again, we have really a match in terms of technical, clinical, and biological, and then it's equivalent. If it is equivalent, then use the clinical data to show mainly that it's helping for proving that your device is safe and performant. And the last is mainly in the case you have your device on the market since many years now. You can use the PMS and PMCF data, which is also considered as real data about your device, to prove that your device is sufficient. Here, the idea is not to use just one, is to try to use multiple, have it within multiple axes. If all of what you are using arrive to the same conclusion that your device is safe and performant, then the reviewer will be happy. So make it not within one strategy, try to find multiple strategies to arrive to the same point, which is safety and performance. So for the literature, as we said, literature is a tricky one, because we think because there is a literature, then it's a golden data. No, it's not a golden data. But within literature, you have grades also. You have literature related to that are systematically reviewed. You have peer-reviewed literature also that are really also literature about your device mainly, which are high. We have literature about equivalent device. Then we have some conference literature, if I can say, or some literature that on some small cases or small studies or whatever. So you have also to understand that literature is graded also. So you have as much as possible to provide a high level grade literature, and you can grade them also within your appraisal to say this literature is coming from a peer review magazine or publication, or it's coming from really a Google Scholar small case review or conference that somebody talked about in a certain time. And this can make the difference also, because having a high quality literatures can also be well appreciated by the reviewer. The other point is also when you are doing the endpoints, because you are defining also some endpoints for your data, you are making them with insufficient clinical performance. So when you are defining not defining them correctly, or defining them with really low level, as we mentioned before, which makes it like doubtful for the reviewer to say, yes, this is qualitative, or this is working well, and this is mainly acceptable. So this is why when you are making this analysis, this review of data, you have to define already the criteria that make sense for them to be accepted or not. So having some endpoints that are not really well defined or defined at the low level can maybe already be refused by a reviewer. And also what we talked about before, again, each time you have a claim, make a data set of clinical data in front of it. So having a table that shows that for this claim you have those data, etc., can be beneficial for you within a reviewer. So the reviewer will be happy because he will see a summary table first. This will help him because this will be traceable for him, understand clearly why you say that this claim is fine or not, show the data set, show the conclusion of them, etc. And then he will be happy because you don't have to circle from one document to another and check everything, etc. No, there is a summary table. It's clear. It shows exactly the source, the data, the why also, and then this will be helpful for him. So make the work of the reviewer really easy by respecting all those rules that we have defined now. And I hope that with that you can really have generated really great data for your clinical evaluation. Okay, let's talk now about something that companies are skipping, voluntarily or not, I don't know, but they are skipping, but this can save their dossier, save their certification, and it saved a lot of companies during this transition between MDD and MDR. And this is the PMCF. As we said before, we heard about PMCF under MDD, but it was just a MedDev that was existing, but to be honest, I never used that within the companies I was working for. So I learned really the PMCF when we arrived to the MDR. And the PMCF is mainly, you have to prove with the PMCF, so post-marketing clinical follow-up, you have to prove that all what you have said before the clinical, before the approval of the CE certificate is right in the real world. Mainly before you are making some clinical investigation with small group of patients, so it's really controlled, you know exactly how it's working, etc. You know who is inside, etc. And now you move to the real world where people will use your data, use your devices, and at the end, we will have to prove that there is an equivalency here, that what we have showed you before is the same after. So mainly, this is a part that you have to do now, it's mandatory, but it's difficult. because some companies are saying, how should I do that? So you can do some PMCF survey. As we said, there are two levels. I mean, if you look at some other podcasts, we talked about PMCF. So there are two levels of PMCF. There are PMCF, normal PMCF, and the PMCF survey, which is a specific one, where you really open a study specifically for your device. You have the registries that we are opening where you can be part of. You have some questionnaire survey that you can send to your customers, some observational studies or cohort. What else? You have some real world data, and we talked about that recently when we had the conference La Rentrée du DM in Besançon, where we had some great examples from some person that was looking for clinical data for their plaster. So it was really difficult to get data from literatures and that. So they had to make some real world data by participating to a trail where people are running and waiting them at the end so that they can propose to them some of those plasters, and then they will be part of a study, etc., during 7 days with them, etc. So it was a great story, but it showed that real world data is also something that can help you to collect most of the data that are showing that your device are fine also. So mainly you have to consider the PMCF as a living validation of your device, because mainly you are really validating your device with it and confirming that everything is fine. And it's also the bridge between the CER that you have done before and the post-marketing surveillance. So it's really the bridge that is working. So it's why I was talking before about traceability of documents. You have to show even post-market how you will be continuing to gather some of those data. So now you have done your CEP, you have done your CER, you have done your PMCF. And you say, is it over? No, it's not over, because you have to redo again this at a certain period. The EU MDR says that it's a continuous evaluation of your device. So mainly you have to continuously check and collect data about your device. So it's a never-ending story. But what you have to understand mainly is that the CER, you create it once because you need the C certification, but then you'll have to create it again and again and again. For example, for class 3 and implantables, mostly it's every year you have to do that. For class 2A to B, it's like 2 to 5 years that you have to do that. You can also say, oh, I don't have to do it, or you have to do it anyway, but justify that maybe you haven't collected enough data, or it's not sufficient, or there is no new information, etc., etc. But you have to redo a clinical evaluation, re-verify during the last year or the last 2 years or 5 years what are the other literatures that were published, and maybe if there is some also change in the state of the art. So we didn't talk about state of the art, but it's something that is needed. So you are comparing yourself also to the state of the art, so mainly what other competitors are doing. So if your device now is excluded from the state of the art because it's too old or not performant enough, or we have more devices that are more performant than your device, then this is something that you have also to evaluate, because the notified body will check that also. We say, yeah, there are new technologies that are arrived that are more performant than yours. Why should we keep your device on the market? So it's also something that is important. So you have to keep a living CR, as we said, with some metrics that you are gathering, some tracking of literatures, as we said, that were published, adverse events also that are identified for your type of products. If also internally you make some design change, and also as we talked about before, PMCF. The PMCF outputs can be also an input to the clinical evaluation report. If there are some data within the PMCF that are really updating the view of your products, maybe with more information, more things, maybe this will be an input to the CEP first, that will then create the CER and come back to the market. So you have all those mechanisms that are existing, and it's why it's really important to understand what is triggering maybe each of them to be activated or to be updated, mainly about that. So review the files each time also there is a new information or data coming, and review also your risk management file, because maybe what you have collected within the PMCF or the CEP/CER can also change the risk management file, or change the residual risk, increase or decrease. So which can be also beneficial or not beneficial. So it's why you have to have a clear view about that. And it's not because you are hiding that it will change something. So notified bodies will be really verifying that you are making this kind of evaluation. So don't miss it, and don't really just think that because you have done your clinical evaluation report, it's finished and you can just now move forward and continue to sell. No, notified bodies will stop you and ask you to show them an update of it and verify that it's still valid for the next 2 to 5 years. So we arrive at the end now, and I hope this helped you to understand. That first, the MDR has completely changed the way to do a clinical evaluation report, clinical evaluation plan also. You have really to make your clinical evaluation plan structured and solid, linked also to the GSPR. You have to be careful of equivalence of data, because even for software, it's really difficult to make an equivalency because software says, do you have the same algorithm or not? So look at the NDCG, there is a table showing exactly how you do equivalency. Also the use of mainly the data in terms of analysis, verify that you get the right grade and quality of data to be used within your clinical evaluation report. The PMCF also make it strategic to continue to collect data, because you have to think of the next round of review of your notified body that will continue to ask questions. So you should not say, oh, since you have given us the certification, I have done nothing, I continued like it. No, you have really to show that you are continuously gathering data, and you are continuously updating also your clinical evaluation report, or you are justifying if you don't update it, but you have to show that it's active. It's not like stayed in the previous years without any change since last update. Okay, so I hope this was really helpful for you to verify all that. So make it a checklist. Listen again to this episode, make it a checklist. Listen also to other episodes that we had on the podcast, which talk about clinical evaluation report, post-marketing surveillance, post-marketing clinical follow-up, so that mainly you can have an understanding also of those elements, and all together you can really make a great system working. And you are the QA/RA person, so mainly you have to guide all the others that are in your team, because you know what should be done, and mainly they will thank you. I hope they will thank you, let's cross the fingers, when you will have a notified body audit that will say that it's perfect, there was no issue at all within your quality management system or your clinical evaluation report, the dossier. Okay, so thank you very much. Don't hesitate to go on the show notes if you want to see more data. And if you have any question or anything, don't hesitate to contact us also. So at Easy Medical Device, we are a consulting firm. We are creating clinical evaluation report, and we can do also updates to it. So don't hesitate to contact us so that we can help you for your project. Thank you very much, and I wish you a nice day.